All right, 1 Samuel 19, the Bible reads, And Saul spake to Jonathan his son and to all his servants that they should kill David. But Jonathan, Saul's son, delighted much in David. And Jonathan told David, saying, Saul my father seeketh to kill thee. Now therefore I pray thee, take heed to thyself until the morning, and abide in a secret place, and hide thyself. And I will go out and stand beside my father in the field where thou art, and I will commune with my father of thee, and what I see that I will tell thee. And Jonathan spake good of David unto Saul his father, and said unto him, Let not the king sin against his servant, against David, because he hath not sinned against thee, and because his works have been to thee were very good. For he did put his life in his hand, and slew the Philistine, and the Lord wrought a great salvation for all Israel. Thou sawest it, and didst rejoice. Wherefore then wilt thou sin against innocent blood to slay David without a cause? And Saul hearkened unto the voice of Jonathan. Saul sware, As the Lord liveth, he shall not be slain. And Jonathan called David, and Jonathan shewed him all those things. And Jonathan brought David to Saul, and he was in his presence as in times past. And there was war again, and David went out and fought with the Philistines, and slew them with a great slaughter, and they fled from him. And the evil spirit from the Lord was upon Saul, as he sat in his house with his javelin in his hand. And David played with his hand. And Saul sought to smite David even to the wall with the javelin, but he slipped away out of Saul's presence, and he smote the javelin into the wall. And David fled and escaped that night. Saul also sent messengers unto David's house to watch him and to slay him in the morning. And Michal, David's wife, told him, saying, If thou save not thy life tonight, tomorrow thou shalt be slain. So Michal let David down through a window, and he went and fled and escaped. And Michal took an image and laid it in the bed, and put a pillow of goat's hair for his bolster, and covered it with a cloth. And when Saul sent messengers to take David, she said, He is sick. And Saul sent the messengers again to see David, saying, Bring him up to me in the bed, that I may slay him. And when the messengers were come in, behold, there was an image in the bed with a pillow of goat's hair for his bolster. And Saul said unto Michal, Why hast thou deceived me so, and sent away mine enemy that he is escaped? And Michal answered Saul, and said, Michal answered Saul, He said unto me, Let me go, why should I kill thee? So David fled and escaped, and came to Samuel to Ramah, and told him all that Saul had done to him. And he and Samuel went and dwelt in Naioth. And it was told Saul, saying, Behold, David is in Naioth, in Ramah. And Saul sent messengers to take David. And when they saw the company of the prophets prophesying, and Samuel standing as appointed over them, the Spirit of God was upon the messengers of Saul, and they also prophesied. And when it was told Saul, he sent other messengers, and they prophesied likewise. And Saul sent messengers again the third time, and they prophesied also. Then went he also to Ramah, and came to the great well that is in Sechu. And he asked and said, Where are Samuel and David? And one said, Behold, they be at Naioth in Ramah. And he went thither to Naioth in Ramah, and the Spirit of God was upon him also. And he went on and prophesied until he came to Naioth in Ramah. And he stripped off his clothes also, and prophesied before Samuel in like manner, and lay down naked all that day and all that night. Wherefore they say, Is Saul also among the prophets? Brother Aaron, would you pray for us?
Dear God, thank you so much for bringing us through another week, being with us every step of the way, so that we can come here and just hear from your word in this continuation of this important book. And of course, we know it's all important, it's all profitable. Correction and doctrine. God, I'm just so thankful for the men in this church to be able to take time away for you and give a little bit of the time that you give to us back to study your word and then to preach it, God. So I'm really excited to hear what you have to share with us this morning. In Jesus' name I pray.
Amen. 1 Samuel chapter 19. We're keep going on. It feels like we've been in this book forever, but we kind of have. But let's just dive right on in. In verse 1 it says, And Saul spake to Jonathan his son, and to all his servants, that they should kill David. But Jonathan, Saul's son, delighted much in David. And Jonathan told David, saying, Saul, my father seeketh to kill thee. Now therefore I pray thee, take heed to thyself unto the morning, and abide in a secret place, and hide thyself. And I will go out and stand beside my father in the field where thou art, and I will commune with my father of thee, and what I see, that I will tell thee. Verse 4, And Jonathan spake good of David unto Saul his father, and said unto him, Let not the king sin against his servant, against David, because he hath not sinned against thee, and because his works have been to thee were very good. So we see that Saul wants David to be killed. He wants him to be killed, and why is that, you know? Well, quite frankly, it's because David's getting all the praise, Saul isn't getting the praise, and Saul is like, I'm the king. This guy is serving me. Why is he getting more praise than me, and I'm above him? And so we see that Saul is prideful and doesn't like the fact that David is getting the praise. And the moment I read this, I'm thinking, well, Saul, you can get the praise if you would have conquered Goliath. If you would have went out and did the battle, you could have got the praise. And then you see in verse 4, again, it says, and Jonathan spake good of David unto Saul his father, and said unto him, let not the king sin against his servant, against David, because he have not sinned against thee, and because his works have been to thee word very good. So we see that Saul is very prideful again. We see that, and we see that Saul doesn't like David, the fact that he is taking over the praise of the kingdom. Everyone's looking to David as their leader, David as their role model, instead of Saul when he is the king. And we see that Jonathan has to talk some sense to Saul. His son has to talk sense into his father, into Saul. And Jonathan is just basically telling him, like, he's done nothing wrong. He's actually done everything for you. He's done your battles. He's fought your hardest battle, Goliath, and you're not doing anything. So of course they're going to praise you. And it's like David is helping you out. All you have to do is just be like him, pretty much. Just follow him. Look at verses 5. Look at verse 5. It says, for he did put his life in his hand and slew the Philistines, and the Lord wrought a great salvation for all Israel. Thou sawest it, and didst rejoice. Wherefore then wilt thou sin against innocent blood to slay David without a cause? So Jonathan is like, why are you going to slay him? Why are you trying to kill him when he's literally delivered you out of the Philistines, and he's doing all these great things for you throughout your kingdom? He's making you kind of look good because, like, there's nothing going on. But in reality, it's David who's really doing all the good stuff, and he's the one looking good. And he's like, you rejoiced. It says right here in verse 5, it says, in this rejoice, wherefore then wilt thou sin against innocent blood to save David without a cause? So Saul was rejoicing that David slew Goliath. Saul was happy about that. But now he's seeing in the last chapter, chapter 18, he's seeing how everyone's praising the praises of David and not of Saul. And they're putting David on a higher pedestal than Saul is. And Saul is a king, and he doesn't like that. And look at verse 6. And Saul hearkened unto the voice of Jonathan, and Saul sware, as the Lord liveth, he shall not be slain. And Jonathan called David, and Jonathan shewed him all those things. And Jonathan brought David to Saul, and he was in his presence as in times past. So we see that Saul listens to his son's counsel, finally. But he's not going to listen to his counsel forever, pretty much. Because later on in this chapter, we're going to see that he's going to get angry again. He's going to try and kill him again. But it's funny how, you're reading 1 Samuel chapter 19, verses 1 through 8. And then in verse 8, if you will, look here, it says, and there was a war again, and David went out and fought with the Philistines and slew them with a great slaughter, and they fled from him. So it's kind of funny how, like, throughout the first 7 verses, Saul is over here trying to kill David, and there's a whole war going on, and Saul's just completely not thinking about it, but David's like, I got to get this done. I got to get this battle done. I got to get the victory. David, in the midst of all the problems that Saul is giving him, is going out and fighting Saul's battles. It's going out and conquering. It's going out and getting rid of the sin, getting rid of the problem. And he's not being like David. I mean, he's not being like Saul. He's not waiting around and seeing where it goes. He's not how Saul was during Goliath, where he's just scared, scampering back. And it's like, will you go? Eliab, will you go? Will you go? No, he's not doing that. David is like, I'll go. I'll just keep going, I beat Goliath. I can beat this army pretty much. He has this big mindset. He has a great mindset. He understands that he can do big things for God, but he knows that the only way he can do that is if he's with God, pretty much. And we're going to see that later on in this passage. But once again, we see that in verse 8 alone, we see that David is showing great leadership. We see that David is showing initiative. He's taking up the pawn and he's saying, you know what, Saul, you're not going to get it done. I'm going to get it done. You're worried about killing me, the guy who just wrought this great victory against Goliath. Well, you know what? I'm going to go and, execute the Philistines. Get rid of this battle, get rid of this leaven, and just keep living my life.
the sweet psalmist of Israel. Just keep doing, keep trucking. And Saul, I'm like, where's Saul at? Why isn't Saul fighting this battle? You're the king, right? Then the people of Israel, they wanted a king so they can fight their battles for them. But the king Saul, he's in his castle, and he's just thinking about, how can I kill David, the man who wrought this great victory, the man who's taken away my problems? How can I kill David? You see the wrong mindset Saul has. Saul's work is focusing on the wrong priority, and it shouldn't even be a priority to begin with, while David is focusing on the right priority. Let's get this battle out of here. Let's get this out of here. Let's get this sin out of the camp, right? Let's get this out of here. And we see that Saul is too busy worried about David, the guy doing his work. Saul is too busy about David doing all of his work for him. And he's trying to kill David. He's trying to kill the man who's being a blessing to him and the kingdom, pretty much. Because think about this. Think about you as a leader, right? And you're scareful and you're fearful. Don't you think the people are going to be scareful and fearful? Because as a leader, right, you know that how your mindset is, that's how the people who follow your mindset is going to be. Like, just thinking about sports reference captains. If the captain is, scared, like, we're going to lose this game, guys, but go out there and have fun. No. You're going to lose. You're just automatically going to lose. But if the captain's giving you a pep talk, and it's like, all right, guys, we're going to go out here. We're going to try our best. We're going to give it all we can, and we're not going to waver. We're not going to cower. We're going to show aggression. We're going to show power, and we're going to go out forth and conquer. Now, you are most likely to win that match. Now, it's a 50-50 match, but if you have the mindset of where you can win, guess what? You can win. And there's so many sports references where you know that the smaller team beats the big team. You're like, well, how does that happen? The big team has all the money. They have all the best stars. They have all the great equipment. And these small teams, they're barely anyone. We don't even know who they are. But yet they beat this big team. Well, because I'm quite sure that the small team, they had the pep talk and they had the mindset where they're like, we can win this. All you have to do is just give it our all. And we just have to not relinquish any of our strength. We just have to give it our all. And that's David and Goliath right there. David just said, you know what? I'm going to give it my all from what God gave to me. I'm going to just do my best, and let's see what happens. And guess what happens? He conquered Goliath. And he walked around with his head, That's the best part of that story. Where he just cuts his head and he's just walking around. I picture that every time I read that. He's just walking around, just throws it. I'm just like, this guy is cool. This is my role model. Let me start cutting heads. Nah, I'll cut pigs' heads. Okay? But we're carrying on in verse 9. But like, again, you see the right mentality. As a leader, even as a husband, you want to care about, like, we're going to do this, and nothing can stop us, pretty much. Only thing that can stop us is God, if he wants us to be. But really, the only thing that can really stop us in our life is ourselves. If we have the mindset where we think we can't conquer anything, if we have the mindset where we think that we can't win, if we have the mindset that we think that everything is negative and we're going to lose, then yeah, you're going to lose every time. Then yeah, you're going to have the wrong mindset. Think about that. Every time you have a negative thought, that just makes you push back and say, like, well, I'm not going to go for it. Like, you think about when I was looking for a new job, I'm like, well, this is a lot of stress. I'm probably not going to, well, I didn't think this, but this is what could have happened. I was like, I knew I was going to get out of this place. But this is a lot of stress. This might, not happen. And if you have that mentality, you might just say, well, just forget it. I'll settle for the less. I'll just settle for this. I'll settle for McDonald's. Like, no, I'm not settling for this. I'm going to go and have a better job, have a better assembly, a better place, a better work environment. But what if I had a mentality where I was complacent? I was happy where I was at, and I didn't want to do anything bigger for God, right? Do you think I would be where I'm at now? No. I would still be at the same place, and I would still be miserable, pretty much. Still be stressed out, still be like, why am I here? Still be like, 925 isn't cutting it. Just like this is horrible. But you see, if you have the mentality where you're like, I'm going to go big or go home. I'm going to go big. I'm going to be like the Elisha, where he said, you should have smited 5 or 6 times so that I have consumed Syria. That's what I'm going to be like. Like, I'm going to keep smiting it 5, 6, 7, 100 times and just get it done. And just have the right mentality and just know that if God be for us, who can be against us? There's nothing that I can do to stop myself unless I say I can't do this. Let's carry on in verse 9 through 10. It says, "And the evil spirit from the Lord was upon Saul, as he sat in his house with his javelin in his hand, and Saul played with his hand. And Saul sought to smite David into the wall with a javelin, but he slipped away out of Saul's presence, and he smote the javelin into the wall, and David fled and escaped that night." Now, in verse 9, look at verse 6. It says, "And Saul hearkened unto the voice of Jonathan, and Saul sware, as the Lord liveth, he should not be slain." But in verse 9, he just immediately tries to slay him. So it's like, didn't you just put this promise on God, as the Lord liveth, he should not be slain? But you didn't kill him, but you did attempt to kill him. You just threw a javelin at him. So good job, David, for running. But in here, I just want to make a quick application. So we see that Saul is trying to kill David again, and we'll see it again and again and again. But David in this instant can picture us in our Christian life, if you think about it. Because here's the thing, you get saved, and then all of a sudden, life hits you, right? The devil hits you. The devil's trying to stop you. The world's trying to stop you, and we see that. And if you would go to 2 Corinthians chapter 4. David can picture us in our Christian life, because we see that David is doing the great things in our sense for God, right? He's doing great things for God. He's doing the Lord's work. He's doing the battle. He's getting the job done. And we see that someone's already trying to kill him because of that. And that's pretty much how the devil kind of operates. The devil sees that we're following his word. He sees that we're on fire for God. We have this huge zeal for the Lord. And Satan's like, I got to calm this zeal down. I got to start putting some stuff and obstacles in his place, so that way he can stop living for God, stop following God, stop serving God, and stop having the desire to want to do right. But you have to realize what David was. David just had this mentality of God before us. Who could be against us? There's nothing that Saul can do that can stop me from serving God or to taking over or to conquering these battles. There's nothing that the Philistines can do to stop me from serving God or any of this stuff. The only thing that can stop me is me. And that's if I decide, if I get discouraged and I say, I'm going to just stop serving God because this isn't working out. That's the only way. And when I read this verse, the first two verses in verses 9 through 10 in 1 Samuel, I thought of 2 Corinthians chapter 4. Look at verse 8. This is Apostle Paul. It says, "We are troubled on every side, yet not distressed. We are perplexed, but not in despair. Persecuted, but not forsaken. Cast down, but not destroyed. Always bearing about in the body of the dying of the Lord Jesus, that the life also of Jesus might be made manifest in our body. For we which live are always delivered unto death for Jesus' sake, that the life also of Jesus might be made manifest in our mortal flesh. So then death worketh in us, but life in you. We have the same spirit of faith, according as it is written, I believe, and therefore have I spoken. We also believe and therefore speak, knowing that he was raised up, the Lord Jesus, shall raise up us also by Jesus, and shall present us with you. Oh, there's a Trinity. For all things are for your sakes, that the abundant grace might through the thanksgiving of many redound to the glory of God. For which cause we faint not, but though our outward man perish, yet the inward man is renewed day by day. For our light affliction, which is but for a moment, worketh for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory. While we look not at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporal, but the things which are not seen are eternal. The apostles were torn down, they were beaten. I'm quite sure they were discouraged, but they knew that if God before us, who can be against us? They know that the same God who raised up Jesus Christ from the dead can pick us up and just say, hey, it's okay. I'm still with you. I'm still here. And that's David. David sees that Saul's trying to kill him. David knows that Saul's trying to kill him. And David knows that Saul does not have the best entrance for him. But David still has the mentality, you know what? If God before us, who could be against us? God, the only person who can destroy me, like I said before, is myself. That's the only person. If I don't let God work in me, then that's me destroying myself, because I'm not letting God have it all. I'm not having God have my best. If you will, go to 1 Peter chapter 5. You say, well, life knocks you down. Satan can knock you down. The world can knock you down. And you know what? that same thing what happened with Job. You know, Job was just persecuted, I think, the most out of everyone. I mean, like, family, his children died, boy was scraping himself with a potsherd. It's like, Job went through it all. But yet, Job didn't decide, I'm going to curse God. Job didn't decide, well, if this is all happening to me in my life, forget God. I'm done with God. I'm done serving God. God can't help me with anything. Job still decided, I'm going to follow God because I know this is right. I know that God can't leave me because God will never leave us nor forsake us. You say, I'm torn down, I'm burdened, I'm weary. And you say, well, what do I do? Well, 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 7 says, casting all your care upon him, for he careth for you. Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour, whom resist steadfast in the faith, knowing that the same afflictions are accomplished in your brethren that are in the world. But the God of all grace, who hath called us unto his eternal glory by Christ Jesus, after that ye have suffered a while, make you perfect, establish, strengthen, settle you. To him be glory and dominion forever and ever. Amen. Just cast your cares upon him. You say, well, I'm discouraged, I'm burned down, life is a burden. And you say, well, life isn't fair. All right, life is not going to be fair at all. All right, life is a competitive race, okay? But you say, it's a burden, I don't know what to do, but God knows what to do. You say, trust in the Lord with all thine heart. I think we say that passage all the time in Proverbs, trust in the Lord with all thine heart, but no one does it. They do half of it. I'll trust God with this much, not finances, with this, not food, not that, not all the necessities that I know God said he will provide, but I'm going to trust him that he'll give me a Lamborghini or something like that. It's like, that doesn't make sense. I think we use that verse, we say that verse, but we just quote it. We don't actually believe it, that he will actually take care of us. And it doesn't make sense that we'll get in a car, or like if we have an Uber, we'll let them drive us anywhere, all relaxed. We get on a plane, we just all relaxed. We're not afraid, that we might die. We get on an RTA and you just think, well, I'm going to make it. But we can't let God control our lives. God who created the universe, we can't let him control our lives. We can't trust in him to get us to point A to point B. But we can let, any Uber driver or any Lyft driver or any RTA driver or even any stranger that you might just know just take you to where you need to go. It just shows, are you lacking in trust for God? David didn't lack in trust for God. I mean, he's sitting right there. He's sitting in the presence of his enemy who's trying to kill him. But he knows that God's not going to I'm not done, serving God yet. I still have great things to accomplish. And he knows that God is not just going to take me out right now. I have things to do for God. And David understood that. David understood that if God be for us, who can be against us? Now, if you will go back to 1 Samuel. David, once again, has that right mentality where he knows that go big or go home, and that if God be for us, who can be against us? There's nothing that the world can throw at me, Satan can throw at me, life can throw at me that can stop me from serving God as long as I put all my trust in him. Not trust for salvation, but believing that God's going to take care of me. I just know that God is in control. And I'm quite sure David was actually happy, during his time. Like, well, how can David be happy when he's being killed? He's trying to be killed. Well, just wait till tribulation, because I'm going to be happy. So, during the tribulation, I'm waiting. I was thinking about this week. Just like, I want the tribulation to happen, like, soon. Which I know it's not going to happen, like, soon. But I want it to happen soon because I want to fight. But I know during this time, I'm going to be, like, super happy. Because I just want to be, like, strap an AK-47 around me and just taking out. I remember, like, the first time I found out that in the tribulation, I was telling my brother, I was like 12. I was like, you know what? If the Antichrist is going to be here, I'm going to just kill him. He was like, he told me, you can't do that because then you're just going to mess up the whole Bible. like, God's going to have to come back and change his word. And Daniel killed the Antichrist. So I couldn't do that. So I was like, crap. I was like, I guess you're right. But hey, he might get 2 bullets from me. But he might not die. He might raise up again. Who knows? But 1 Samuel chapter 19, look at verse 11. It says here, Saul also sent messengers unto David's house to watch him, and to slay him in the morning. And Michal, David's wife, told him, saying, If thou save not thy life tonight, tomorrow thou shalt be slain. So Michal let David down through a window, and he went and fled and escaped. And Michal took an image and laid it in the bed, and put a pillow of goat's hair for his bolster, and covered it with a cloth. And when Saul sent messengers to take David, she said, He is sick. And Saul sent the messengers again to see David, saying, Bring him up to me in the bed, that I may slay him. And when the messengers were come in, behold, there was an image in the bed, with a pillow of goat's hair for his bolster. And Saul said unto Michal, Why hast thou deceived me so, and sent away my enemy, that he is escaped? And Michal answered Saul, He said unto me, Let me go. Why should I kill thee? So we see that Saul, once again, is determined to have David killed. And it makes me think, like, what if Saul had so much of a determination to have David killed that he had the same amount of determination to get his kingdom right? It just thinks, like, Saul could have been, like, in the history books for good. It's like, if Saul had the right mindset, instead of trying to kill David, but to kill the Philistines, kill Goliath, so determined to kill the guy who's saving himself, making himself look good, but he just instead decided to, kill the Philistines. That would have made more sense, thinking for us who's thinking logically, who just thinks, trying to kill David, the man who killed your enemies. Now you made David your enemy because he did it for you. How about you just kill? It just doesn't make sense for Saul. But if you will go to Acts chapter 12, and we see in 1 Samuel, we see another application we can make, is that we see that David is delivered out of the hands of Saul. Because David, if he would have stayed, he was most likely going to be killed right then and there. And we see that Michal delivered David out of the hands, David's wife, out of the hands of Saul. And just like God delivers us out of our troubles, out of our afflictions, out of our trials, but like I said before, we just have to make sure we trust in God to do these things. God can deliver us. You're there in Acts chapter 12. I said God can deliver us out of the hands of our enemies in unthinkable ways, but He can also do it in unthinkable ways. And like I said, all we have to do is just simply trust Him. We just have to simply believe that God can do it all, and we just have to believe that this world isn't my home, and I know that this is God. God rules in me, and I know that whatever God has in plan, that's what I'm going to do. Now you're there in Acts chapter 12. Look at verse 1. It says, now this is one of my. I like the whole Bible, but like I get into certain phases where like this is my favorite passage, and then the next passage, like, all right, this is my favorite passage. That's why I just say I like the whole Bible, because it's never concrete, it's never clear. Like this is set in stone, my favorite passage. But this is my favorite story. So Acts chapter 12 verses 1 through 7, it says, Now about the time Herod the king stretched forth his hands to vex certain of the church, and he killed James, the brother of John, with the sword. And because he saw it pleased the Jews, he proceeded further to take Peter also. Then were the days of unleavened bread. And when he had apprehended him, he put him in prison and delivered him to 4 quaternions of soldiers to keep him, attending after Easter to bring him forth to the people. Peter, therefore, was kept in prison, but prayer was made without ceasing of the church unto God for him. And when Herod would have brought him forth the same night, Peter was sleeping between 2 soldiers, bound with 2 chains, and the keepers before the door kept the prison. And behold, the angel of the Lord came upon him, and a light shined in prison, and he smote Peter on the side and raised him up, saying, Arise up quickly. And his chains fell off from his hands. So we see right here in verses 1 through 7 that Paul is delivered from, being killed, because Herod was going to kill him because it pleased the Jews. But we see that Peter is delivered from God, and we see that. Actually, go to verse 20 again. Verse 20. We see that Peter is delivered of God, and Peter wasn't, it doesn't say here that Peter, was crying or anything. It doesn't say that Peter was discouraged. He probably was, but it doesn't say that, so I'm going to just run with that. It didn't say that, Peter was discouraged or crying or was just like, God, what's wrong? What's going on? It just says Peter was kept in prison, but prayer was made without ceasing of the church unto God for him. The church was praying for him. They knew that the church had faith. The church trusted in God that, hey, God the Father who raised up the Son, Jesus Christ, he can deliver Peter out of this. He can deliver Peter out of this situation. To man, it seems impossible. To man, it seems like this is set in stone. He's bound with chains. He got 4 soldiers guarding him. It's impossible. But with God, all things are possible. But you just have to believe him. And if you notice, like, the stories in the Bible, I'm sorry, not the stories in the Bible, but the passages in the Bible where Jesus did the most miracles is because they had belief. It says, I believe in Matthew, it says in Matthew, it says he did no miracles there because of their unbelief. And he departed. And you see, well, I'm a trust in God, but halfway. And it's like, no, it's not halfway. You're all in or all out. You say, well, in that passage where Jesus did no miracles because of your unbelief, you're just like, well, that's not me, but it kind of is you because you're not trusting fully. You think that, like, you're only putting half of your trust in him. You're not putting full trust. God wants us to fully serve him, not half serve him, right? We don't need to do half of the job. We need to do full of the job. If you're at point A, just go all the way to C. Don't just stop at B, go to C. Verses 20. This is my favorite part of the passage. Verses 20 through 24, it says, and Herod was highly displeased with them of Tyre and Sidon, but they came with one accord to him, and having made Blastus the king's chamberlain, their friend, desired peace because their country was nourished by the king's country. And upon a set day, Herod, arrayed in royal apparel, sat upon his throne and made an oration unto him. The people gave shouts, saying, it is the voice of a God, and not of a man. And immediately the angel of the Lord smote him, because he gave not God the glory. And he was eaten of worms, and gave up the ghost. But the word of God grew and multiplied. So Peter could have been killed, right, by Herod. But God provided a way for Peter to get delivered. God opens up the chain. God, the soldiers, the people were praying in the church, and God basically opens up the door for them. But God wasn't done delivering. God wasn't done all the way yet. He was like, you're delivered, Paul. You're safe, but also I'm killing Herod. He's like, Herod's going to die. And that's pretty much what's going to happen with Saul. in chapter 31, Saul is going to die. Now, it's not that it was God literally smote Saul, but Saul does commit suicide, as I'm spoiling that chapter. But I'm preaching that chapter, so it doesn't matter. So you'll hear it twice from the same person. But if you were to go back to 1 Samuel chapter 19, so sum up these applications. Trust in God. Don't be afraid. Just know that if God before us, we can be against us. Have the mentality that I can do this. And, it sounds cliche. It sounds like a kindergarten pep talk. Like, you can do it, Billy. Like, it sounds like that. But in reality, it is like that. I mean, like, if you believe in God, if you trust in God, nothing can be against. No one can devour us. That's why in 1 Peter chapter 5, it says, cast all your cares upon him. But here's the thing, you have to be sober and be vigilant. Because your adversary, the devil, is seeking whom he may devour. He's seeking around, seeing who can I devour, who can I tear down. Oh, he's not trusting in God. He's trusting in God for salvation, but not for his life, pretty much. He's not trusting God to take care of his life or anything. So I'm going to go to him, and I'm going to discourage him, and I'm going to tear him down, tear down his faith, break down his faith, and then he'll backslide, pretty much. He won't follow God all the way through. Look at verses 19. We'll finish up the chapter, verses 19 through 24. In 1 Samuel chapter 19. It says, and it was told Saul, saying, behold, David is at Naioth in Ramah. And Saul sent messengers to take David. And when they saw the company of the prophets prophesying, and Samuel standing as appointed over them, the Spirit of God was upon the messengers of Saul, and they also prophesied. And when it was told Saul, he sent other messengers, and they prophesied likewise. And Saul sent messengers again, the third time, and they prophesied also. Then went he also to Ramah, and came to a great well that is in Seku. And he asked and said, where are Samuel and David? And one said, behold, they be at Naioth and Ramah. And he went thither to Naioth and Ramah, and the Spirit of God was upon him also. And he went on and prophesied until he came to Naioth and Ramah. And he stripped off his clothes also, and prophesied before Samuel in like manner, and lay down naked all that day and all that night. Wherefore they say, is Saul also among the prophets? So in verse 19 through 24, we see that Saul, again, he's still trying to kill David. But Saul sends messengers 3 times to Naioth. And all 3 times the messengers begin to preach. They begin to prophesy. They begin to be like the prophets who are already there, pretty much. And eventually Saul's like, eventually Saul decides to take initiative. Now he takes initiative at the wrong time, pretty much. Like he should have took initiative in chapter 17 with Goliath. But now he decides, I'm gonna just go down there and kill him myself. It's pretty much what he's gonna try and do. But Saul eventually goes down and he begins to preach as well. And what I got from that is that people's spirit can rub off of each other. Because I think about like when we go to like conferences, it's like I feel great. I feel like I can conquer. Like I'm about to just devour everything. It's like I feel great. And then immediately you leave, it just goes down. It's like it doesn't. It's not at that same peak point. It just goes down. Like I remember when we went to Soul Winning Conference. Like this is great. I'm like I gotta keep going to this. I was like this is going to last me for the rest of the year. The conference happened in April. The spirit left in March. The spirit left in May. It just left. It wasn't there for a whole year, for the rest of the year. But you see that people's spirits can rub off of each other, and we see that we have to be around people who are spirit-filled, people who are actually, seeking God, following God, loving God, and that could cause us to preach the word, preach the Bible. You say, well, don't peer pressure. Well, good peer pressure. Peer pressure people to believe the Bible. Peer pressure your people who are Christians into doing the right thing. Peer pressure them to go out sowing. Peer pressure them to go out and talk and do these things. And we see that Saul, he had the intentions to kill David, but he goes down there and he starts preaching. People's spirits can rub off of each other. And that's the importance of friends, who our friends are. My closest friends are not drug addicts. My closest friends aren't gangbangers or any of this other stuff. My closest friends are people who actually love the Lord and who actually care about God. Because what if my friends were these people who just had no care for God? That means that's how I'm going to possibly be. I'm saved, but it's just that I'm not all the way in there. I'm not fully all the way in serving God as I could be if I was around the right crowd, right? Isn't that what every mother said, be around the right crowd? I remember that. Be around the right crowd. Don't hang out with the wrong people. Don't do this, don't do that with these people. If your friends jumped off the cliff, would you do it? I'm like, well, if it's skydiving, yeah. But that's the implication I got from verses 19 to 24. It's just a simple fact that the people you're around, they can cause you to do the same thing. And like, think about it. If you're around a party and there's drinking, you could possibly drink. You say, well, I never drank before. Well, peer pressure you can give into. Now, not me, because I'm so spirit-filled. And I'm not carnal like everyone else. I'm holy. But, just kidding. But not kidding. But don't be around that crowd. Be around the people who are spirit-filled. And yes, I know, I'm not saying, be the Amish. Live out in some vacant land and just only be us three and no more. Of course, we have to live out in the world. But your friends, your closest, best friends, like this is my dude, man. Like this is my best friend, or this is my girlfriend, whatever it is. That should not be, the people who you hang around the most, who are just, the most wicked scums of the earth, pretty much. Now, you can win them to Christ, but if they're still going to do, the same things, you're still discipling them, you distant them kind of away. People think I'm in a cult because I distant people away. It's like, you distant yourself. Most of the time, I don't have to distant anyone away. They just leave because I'm weird. Weird for some reason. But if I just say this, if I'm weird, then I guess you think God's weird. But some people are weird in their own different ways. Let's bow our heads in a word of prayer. Thank you, Lord, for letting me be able to preach this sermon. I pray that it's been a blessing, Lord. I pray that we can just take the applications from it in life. And I pray that we can just realize that if God be for us, who can be against us? Let us just continue to trust in you and continue to believe that you can do everything. We trust in you to, get us to heaven. We trust in your son to get us to heaven. Why can't we trust in you to take care of our life? Take care of the things that we need, because we know that all we need is food and raiment, and let us therewith be content. We trust in you, Lord, and we honor you. And I'm thankful for this church, Lord. I pray that we can have a great day of soul winning and a great day for the Columbus Soul Winning Marathon this coming Saturday, Lord. Let's see a lot of people saved, and let us be able to see Conrad there. Let him get his zeal, Let him be like Saul. He comes down there, he just starts prophesying. He just moves us out of the way, all the talking, like I'm gonna talk. Lord, I just thank you. I'm thankful for this church, Lord. I'm thankful for the fellowship and the friendships. And I pray that you just be with us all throughout the sermon for the morning. Let us be attentive and listening. Open our hearts, open our ears, Lord. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.